Next, the students of our school will present a depiction of the book What the Dark Sounds Like, written by Miss Aparna Kapur, an individual who keenly knows the value of imagination over reality. From an award winning dissertation on inclusivity in children's books to various children's books themselves, everything she writes is a must read.
I wanted to know what the dog sounds like. So I listened to a night. One dog barking and a lot of quiet. I wanted to know what wonder feels like. So I touched a tree. I wanted to know what love smells like. That one was easy. A cake and the one who bakes it. I wanted to know what confusion tastes like. So I ate a dream. Crunchy and tangy, sweet and chewy. I can almost remember it. I wanted to know what magic looks like. So I looked up at the clouds and down at the mud. Magic was all around me. Magic is always around us. Magic will always be around us.
Thank you for that wonderful performance. I now request Dr. C. Chandramouli to present a bouquet to the distinguished author, Ms. Aparna Kapur, on stage, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Aparna Kapur writes books for children of all ages. She has been on various editorial teams and is currently a consultant for Harper's Collins Children's. She has also presented papers at conferences across the world, curated reading lists, conducted writing workshops, and participated in panel discussions about children's literature. When she isn't writing or editing children's books, she can be found poring over a book or pouring herself a large cup of coffee. Now, for the second moderating session, I invite on stage Ms. Aparna Kapur and Omera TA as the moderator, please.
Good morning, ma'am, distinguished guests, authors, and students. I'm Omera, currently studying in grade 11, and today I'm going to be moderating this session on the book What Does the Dark Sound Like by Aparna Kapur.
Hello, everyone. And hi, Omega.
Yes, ma'am. Even though the book was aimed at a much younger audience, as a teenager, I quite enjoyed reading the book. The sensory descriptions of each sound, taste, and smell were quite extremely descriptive and amusing to read. Can we move on to the question? Yeah. I would like to start by asking you, what inspired you to write a children's book about sensory elements, and why did you choose to focus on sound and taste as a key element?
So I don't know if that's what I would say the book is about. It's not for me to say what the book is about. But what I wanted to write was about these huge inner lives that children have, or everyone has, but these huge, interesting ways in which we experience the world. And so I used senses as a way to get through it, also a way to um, change our perception of what normal is. Because no one can taste confusion, and no one can hear the dark technically. So it was a way for me to ask questions that aren't, even the question leads to more questions and more explorations. And I feel like I wanted to just capture the unique way in which we all relate to the world around us.
Thank you, ma'am. And that leads to my follow-up question. What emotions are you trying to portray through the exploration of these sensory elements to the readers?
So I feel like the the feelings that that I talk about in this book are love and wonder and magic, and these are all they're very simple questions on the surface of it, and these are questions that we ask throughout our lives. This is what being a human in the world is all about. But as we grow up, I think a lot of adults are more comfortable pretending to know the answers to questions rather than continue to wonder what the questions are. And I often find younger people are more brave in saying, I don't know, and what is this, and what is love? Actually, I don't know if any grown up can suitably answer it. And through the book, I didn't want to answer these questions, and I don't think that it does. It's more like, what if I look over here, and maybe I'll find the answer there. And it's more of a quest for the answers to the questions that actually we're all asking.
Truly. But I wanted to ask, do any of these sounds or like senses that you've used have any significance from your childhood or any personal experience that inspired this book?
So I feel like whenever I write, it's a way for me to figure out how I feel about things and how I think about things. And it took me a long time to get to the stage of writing where I was comfortable putting myself in the writing that I do. And I think that's when writing starts to get interesting or good, when it's honest. And so now whenever I write, I feel like it's my way of saying, these are the things that interest me. These are the things that I think about. And here is who I am in a snapshot. So cake is very important to me, and trees are very important to me. So I guess it's very true to me. That said, like I said before, these are not answers to the questions. This is questions leading to more questions, and for readers to hopefully go away thinking, who am I? And what are the things that interest me? Like this kid finds love in food and the people who cook for him. And what about me? What do I associate with love? And what do I associate with wonder? And hopefully, it's a way to get to know yourself better or to think about the things that are actually really important that we might not spend that much time thinking about.
Yes, ma'am. When I had read your book, there were beautiful illustrations on it. So I wanted to ask, why did you choose this book format and style? And how do you think the illustrations complement the text?
So the illustrations have been done by my friend Krishna, and he is a fantastic illustrator who has a very deep respect for childhood and the subject of childhood, which is children who don't often get represented in books. So the text was open ended enough that he could see whatever he wanted in it, and I believe that in its best form, a picture book is only half done when I finish writing it. So to have someone like Krishna illustrated who chose to, if you see the book, it's not it's not a fancy house that the kid is living
very
in,
simple.
and his friends are the dogs on the street, and the street outside is not, it's not full of it has, there is trash by the side of the road. There are tall buildings, but there are also tiny shacks, and he wanted to represent a neighborhood that feels familiar to everybody. And luckily, so in creative fields or in any field, when you grow up, you will have to work with other people. And a very important part of whom you choose to work with is work with somebody you trust and respect, but also somebody who trusts and respects you. And uh, jokingly, because we are friends, I was like, I'll stay out of your way when you're illustrating my book. But I actually did have to try that hard to stay out of his way, because I had full faith in the fact that he gets the book. And now my biggest compliment is that it felt very autobiographical to him as well. So the
Yes,
biggest
ma'am, it
compliment.
really brought out the text when I was like reading the book for children, especially to be able to read with pictures on the side. Yes, ma'am. Speaking of children, how do you think children perceive the concept of like darkness or the other senses you've used in the book? And what message do you aim to send through the story? I think we've already
Um, I feel like the interesting thing about your question is that there is no answer, in that everybody thinks about, like, some children might find darkness exciting, and some might be scared of it, and some might find it peaceful. And the fact is that when we tell stories, there are so many versions of stories that should be told. For instance, if you're talking about the climate crisis, there is somebody who's going to a protest, and their story is important. There are scientists who are working there, their story is important. There are people who want to go to the protest but can't because they have a disability and it's not accessible to them. Their story is important as well. There are people who can't afford to take time off to go to a protest. Their story is important as well. So all of these stories are important, what we call a plurality of narratives, in that we want as many voices as possible so that we can see the interesting things that people think about. And I don't have a message. I never have a message when I write the book. But I do think, even though this book is meant for younger kids, I do think there is a merit in even slightly older kids reading it, because I think what is the basic crux of it is that it leads to, it exercises your imagination. And I feel that's the biggest tool that we have as people, just an imagination. Because if you're young and you make your mind more elastic, when we're just, as we grow up, we are told this is how the world is, and this is what this is, and this is how people are supposed to be, and this is what that person is like, this is how society is built. But it takes a certain, we need to be able to imagine a different world to be able to say, oh, but why is that like that? Or maybe it shouldn't be like that. And all of that comes from just being able to exercise your imagination. So, yeah, I guess that's,
that's it.
yeah, that's the.
Yes, ma'am. And I wanted to ask, the book talks a lot about like senses. Was it difficult to write about senses when the book was meant to be read visually, even though the senses talk about sounds?
So it wasn't difficult for me to write this book because it was so personal, and because when I wrote it, I didn't imagine it to become a picture book at that time. But I just, I just wanted to write in a way that, like, even if it wasn't illustrated, it would be a very different version of it. But I still think it says what I wanted to say.
Ma'am, what kind of feedback do you have for? What kind of feedback have you received from young readers, and has any one of their interpretations surprised you?
Well, actually, I went to Dehradun with Valley of Words, and there was a beautiful mime performance of this book that someone did, which blew me away because, well, initially when I was told it's a mime performance, I was very skeptical because, like, without my words, how can this book work? But it was beautiful, and so as a mime, there were no expressions and there were no words. But even if you strip that away, it was a very beautiful interpretation of the story, and the performance was very gorgeous.
Yes, ma'am. Um, how do you think this book might impact children's imaginations, especially when they think about these concepts?
Yeah, so I want people to think about what their version of this book would look like. So exercise the imagination, as in I would like them to see something and approach it from a different angle. My favorite thing in the world is seeing how people express themselves, whether that's through song or poetry or film or books, but also how they tell a story and what turns of phrases they use, and whether they have a lot of sports metaphors in there, or they keep referencing Bollywood. So all of these tell me a lot of things about them, and I'm very interested in how people view the world, because like I read a lot of books, so I use literature as a way to s- see the world and understand the world, and I write also to see the world and understand the world. So I hope that I'm not interested in people reading the story as much as people wanting to tell their stories. So I hope that that's what it will do to people's imagination, make them think of what their version of this story would look like.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask you if you're working on any future projects and if you're willing to give any hints of that sort.
I'm working on, as most of my work on it is over, so I'm very comfortable talking about it now. It's called An Absence of Squirrels, and it's a book for young people aged 8 and up. It's a novel.
Yes, ma'am. And if you, last but not least, if you were able to expand this book into a series exploring other sensory elements, what would be the next theme or feeling you want to explore and why?
Um, that's a great question, but I'm not sure. I think there are things that I would. So originally, this book ended with magic was not always around me. I had found it in a book originally, in the original draft of the story, and because that's where I find magic. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like that's not saying what I wanted to. And what I actually set out to say with this book is uh, to cherish what we have, or to notice what we have, what's around us. Like the things in the book are a dog and food and a tree and nighttime, which we see every day. Things that are all around us all the time. And it's easy to not see them or not pay attention to them just because they are so common. And this was my little attempt to pay attention to the things that often go unnoticed. So I think there are many things like that that we tend to not look at just because we see them every day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. It was a pleasure and honor to be
Thank you
able to
so
interview
much.
you today. And I would definitely recommend ma'am's book for all teenagers my age as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Omera. It's now time for questions from the audience.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Madhav, and my question to you is: how do you envision young readers interpreting the concept of darkness? Do you see it as a metaphor, or anything beyond literal darkness?
Do you see it as a metaphor?
Um, Darkness, as of such, I see as something to be scared of. So, as personally, I don't see it as a metaphor, but I feel like there's something even more to darkness than what we can see from our eyes.
Yeah, that's actually a much deeper answer than I would have given. But I think that darkness, why a lot of kids are scared of it, is because it represents the unknown. adults are also scared of the unknown. But yeah, if I had to ascribe a metaphor to it, that's what it would be.
Okay,
But
thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Advika and I'm from NPS International. So, ma'am, you mentioned that this book was very personal to you. So, I wanted to ask, is there a particular person, a real person who inspired this book, or did it feel more autobiographical to you?
yeah, must very self-centeredly say that it's me only. This it was inspired by my own self, but also with the fascination of um, just how frankly a lot of young people are able to talk about such huge things, and I think as adults we are a bit afraid of talking about those things. So I wanted to um, think of how I used to think about these things when I was a kid.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good morning. In your very, very own words, how would you describe the darkness?
These are, I put all my words in here so that I don't have to, now you have to tell me what your version of it is. What does the darkness sound like to you? But don't worry, I took a long time to write these words, so you also take a long time to think about what it means to you. But these are my very own my very own words are all in the book.
Uh,
Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Gladwin. My question is, what techniques did you use to ensure that the story was accessible to children while also conveying a deeper meaning?
I think that um, the most important things can be said in less than 500 words, and I don't think I had to really try because I think kids are very deep, and the way that I normally write or think about things is in these forms. So I don't think it looks very simple, but I don't think this is an easy book, if that makes sense.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Varun and I am studying in Goodard School. I have a more general question. What would be your advice to aspiring authors who feel too self conscious or shy to publish their books?
That's a great question. I think there are two parts of your brain you have to exercise. One is that you have to write a lot. And then eventually, something that you write will start to sound like something that only you could have written. And that's how I started. I started by copying the way my favorite authors would write. And then eventually, I stumbled upon ideas that that it took me by surprise that, oh, where did this come from? Only I could have written it. So write lots and don't be afraid to copy other people when you're starting off and figure out what you sound like. And the other part of your brain you have to exercise is to think a lot. Think about, like, look at things and read things and then think about how you feel about those things. Even if it's a book you don't like, think about why you didn't like it and what you would have done differently. So, exercising that part of your brain is also very important. I often think that it would be great to go back to the kind of writer I was when earlier because I was not precious about my writing. I just wrote a lot, which I don't do anymore. But
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Ninita from Good Earth. I have a question for you. So, I wrote a fictional book about a year ago, and now after reading it again, I feel I can improve a lot. So, do you have any tips for me so I can improve a bit more?
you're already on the right track. You wrote something, you let it sit. When you came back to it, you said, oh, I can make this better. Keep making it better. I think that's my only advice.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Nikhilesh. So, do you think, how do you see this story as a tool for parents and educators to have open discussions with their children about emotions?
Um, Yeah, I do think picture books are very good at that to serve as these little tools for people to have conversations. And how I think parents and educators would best be able to answer that. But I do feel that the open endedness of the book can lead to a lot of interesting and insightful conversations as long as the people who are having them are, are actually listening to each other.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Siddhantika and I'm from Wales International. My question is, did you ever feel nervous or scared while writing your book? And if so, how did you overcome this feeling?
I don't overcome it. I'm always scared when I write something. I never know if it's good. I don't believe other people when they tell me it's good. And but I think deep inside me, I have a huge ego because I think other people should read what I've written. So both of these things somehow coexist within me, and I think both of them are no. Actually, the ego is very important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Nishan. So, what message did you want to send about curiosity and embracing the unknown?
I think your question already has the answer in it. Uh, there was no message intended, but I did want to capture the sense of curiosity and wanting to look for answers to your question and to explore the world around you and think about how it makes you feel. And yeah, that was what I wanted to do in the book.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, audience. Now, I'd like to invite on stage Dr. C. Chandramouli to present the memento to Ms. Aparna Kapur. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you, Ms. Kapoor, for joining us today as well as that wonderfully engaging and informative session.